This evening on Money Matters, we discuss the insurance industry amid the COVID-19 pandemic. And with floods battering the nation, how can insurance help? All this on insurance industry trends for 2021 right now. Welcome to Money Matters with me, Tamina Kausji. On today's episode, we speak to the General Insurance Association of Malaysia, PIAM. Now, PIAM is a statutory trade association recognized by the government of Malaysia for all registered insurers who transact general insurance business. With me now is the chairman of PIAM, Antony Lee. Antony, welcome to studios. How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you, Tamina.
Thanks so much for taking time out of what I'm sure is a very busy schedule.
Sure.
Let's get the ball rolling with some of the most current issues that we have on the table here, insurance-wise, Antony.
All right.
So, MOH, the Ministry of Health Malaysia, is currently in discussions with private hospitals on taking on COVID-19 patients as well, amid, of course, the alarming rise in daily caseloads.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about what are some of the contentious issues and how we can actually work around them for a favorable outcome for all, particularly the insured.
Sure. I guess first I want to say just dialogue has only just begun, and I guess it's sad to see that we reached this stage. Obviously, the insurance industry will do its best to try and help out. We've come up with a COVID test fund, etc.
That's right.
Before, and it's still rolling out. But let me make sure to I guess some examples. Number one is. Typically, MHI policies don't cover pandemic, right? So if we were to have covered it, the premiums would have been a lot higher because this is clearly a very grave situation. So we need to be careful because we would be dipping into reserves, etc., which would cause potential issues for each individual insurance company. So we're working closely with Bank Negara to see what are the options. And an example in Singapore, for example, we know that there was discussions with the government probably 6 months ago.
Sure.
What I'm led to believe is that there was clear. I think we need to separate what is a quarantine situation and what is a hospitalization situation. So we need to ensure that what is the process that the government's looking at. All of that is unclear. This could run into billions of ringgit if it's
potentially speaking.
Absolutely. So that is a pretty significant impact. So we really need to work carefully to work out. Are individual hospitals going to be specialized just to do COVID? Is it a free-for-all? What are the protocols? And I think also it shouldn't be a situation where people feel like, well, I can just go to a hospital and they're going to look after me regardless, right?
Absolutely.
Because we need to look at, where's the critical nature where people need to be treated, where they really need the help. So all of this is still up for discussion, but we know there is a sense of urgency, so we're ready, have already started discussions.
Fantastic. Well, it's great to know that, our PIAM as well as many other industry stakeholders are already in the discussions and getting the ball rolling. Now, speaking about the unfolding crisis as well, how is the insurance industry likely to shape up in just the very immediate short term, Antony? Some of the trends that you've noticed.
Sure. So, definitely digitalization is a trend. So, more and more consumers are willing to go direct. Don't feel the need to have to come physically to meet people. I think that's positive, given the current COVID situation. We have certain areas like travel insurance obviously is impacted because, people aren't able to travel. The impact of the economy obviously impacts the industry as well.
Naturally. So, people's movement as well as the industrial sectors too.
Absolutely. So we did see last year, for example, when there was complete lockdown, there was a direct impact. Everything kind of ground to a halt. But we did see the economy start to recover and hence also insurance premiums start to recover. We are doing things to help businesses, obviously on a case-by-case basis, depending on insurers, where they need help in terms of payment of premiums. We are concerned where there may be a rise in fraud potentially.
Very true.
So
and it's a little bit harder to actually have those checks and balances in place with everything digitalized.
That's right. And then of course for all of us, our employees, the whole working from home, the stresses, and it applies to of course everybody, but it's not easy. But I think we've done very well in the first year. I think we don't see customer complaints rising. in any significant way.
If anything, customer engagement would have actually trebled, if not gone up 4- or 5-fold.
That's right. That's right. There's been a lot of asking about things that are covered, not covered, etc. I think there's a heightened awareness now, because people at home, they were worried about their health and what else. And I think the good thing is that insurance is still an affordable way to get things covered, especially in a time of crisis. You do need to have that cover because if something untoward happens, at least you've got coverage. So there's more awareness there, which is positive.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's spend a little bit of time before we go off into a break,
Sure.
Antony, on telling me more about the COVID-19 test fund
Sure.
and how much of it has actually been utilized and how is the remainder of it going to be executed.
Sure. So when we started, obviously it was a call to rally. We managed to get 8 million across the industry, which is great.
That's right.
And the whole reason was because people that had coverage, typically doing a test, if you're found to be negative, it's not covered. So this is to make sure that people aren't afraid to go and get tested. We've utilized up to 2 million so far, which is not too bad. And we've also broadened the scope. So we cover even if you go in for an emergency situation in a hospital, that test is covered by the fund. And we're in active dialogue to try and make sure we can do more as much as possible with the fund. And we were cognizant that there would be a wave 2, wave 3, etc. So we're kind of managing that process. But all the insurers really stepped up and contributed, which was great.
Yeah, fantastic. So with about 6 million left to go, that does remain, the entire year, financial year of 2021 for it to be dispersed.
Yeah, that's right.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Antony. So let's take a short break now. Find us on Twitter. Share your thoughts on the discussion so far. Coming up, we will be speaking about insurance and the ongoing floods that are also impacting many Malaysians around the country. Stay with us. Welcome back to Money Matters. If you're just joining us, we're speaking to the chairman of the General Insurance Association of Malaysia, PIAM. So, Antony, going straight back into the conversation, now with the recent floods in the East Coast and even Sarawak affected and close to 50,000 Malaysians evacuated so far, what are the estimated claims for the flood damages going to be coming up to, sharing all the way back from when the floods were really bad back in 2014 as a reference point?
Absolutely. So we are still compiling 2020 data. It's a bit too early, unfortunately, to have a full picture. But if we look at the 2014 to 2018 years, 2017 was the worst overall. There was about 236 million ringgit worth of claims. And mind you, Penang took up about 146 million of that in 2017. So we think similar pattern this year will be to 2014. 2014, we had about 187 million in claims paid out. And that's about 3 times the normal trend. So, we think that that's probably the likely scenario, obviously plus inflation from that time.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it does seem to be a pretty challenging situation, particularly because PIAM, though, has stepped up, come out to assure that flood victims have purchased flood cover as part of their general insurance policy, that it will be quickened up.
Yes.
But however, what about reaching another part of the Malaysian citizenry who have yet to get their flood cover or even flood-related insurance despite being in high-risk areas?
No, absolutely. So, we constantly obviously push the agenda on flood cover. I think we see in motor is definitely rising. People are more willing and keen to ask about flood cover and take it up. And the cost is coming down because we have got partial liberalization, so that does help. But however, in the rural areas, there's still a lot of work to be done in educating and also reaching out. And I think there is something to be said, obviously prevention better than cure, but I think it is a bit concerning that it seems to be the similar places always get affected.
Absolutely. It's a trend, and this has been happening for the past 10, 20 years. That's
right. And I was reading, a lot of money spent on infrastructure, but somehow it's not turning it around. So I don't know. I think there needs to be a real relook at that. In terms of, how can we work closer with the states and et cetera to see, where are the real issues. And unfortunately, you're right. A lot of them are probably rural agricultural areas that really don't typically buy any kind of cover at all. So that may need to be something on the national agenda.
Absolutely. I think it brings to broad focus as well the need to focus on not just sustainable development goals, but as well as climate change and how it actually impacts us, right? Right. So moving on from there, though, PIAM's thoughts on also the 12 banks which are now offering a loan moratorium for up to 6 months, with some providing deferment of loan installments and even waiver of late payment charges, and how this will hopefully assist those who are stuck in the floods, particularly with business interests.
So I think we typically do work individually on deferred payments for premiums. So, it's individual companies work with their own insureds. Motor is cash before cover, so that's a policy, right? So that's something that is too difficult to change. But there have been companies where offering 6 months, etc., to buy a policy for a certain period and then carry on. So there's some flexibility there. But overall, it's the life insurance companies really actually the ones that have been working. And I think there's some figures banded about where, I think about 260,000 policyholders have had some form of, whether it's relief or additional coverage or premiums across all the sector. So, there has been stuff that is happening behind the scenes.
Sure, but at least for the more urban areas, though, Antony, with so many flooded out vehicles as well as properties damaged, how does PIAM manage the deluge of cases considering the remote working situation? What kind of a time frame are the insured generally looking at?
So, in terms of floods, I mean, this is our DNA, right? This is where we rise up to the challenges. This is what we're all about. So we typically, you'll see that we have different, obviously, standards, but majority of people in a flood situation, within 3 to 5 days, there will be some coverage paid out. So we have fast turnaround. We have 24-hour hotlines set up. There are, adjusters that go on site to inspect. So we're quite used to this. Sad to say.
But then again, one thrives and you actually rise to the challenge and then you do even better the next time.
Exactly. And those policyholders, then they realize, wow, that was worth buying the policy because I immediately got cover. And we recognize, very importantly, is that this is the time where they really need cash in the hand. So some companies immediately give, up to 5,000 ringgit straight off the bat without even processing the claim, because they know it's going to be covered, and they know that the insureds actually need money to, just pay the bills and get things done, right?
Absolutely.
So that's critical, yeah.
And just out of curiosity, though, not just looking at the flood scenario, but even the COVID-19 pandemic,
Sure.
have you actually seen an uptake in insurance policies from the younger generation, who are generally a little bit harder to get on board, right?
Definitely much more interest in health policies. So whether it's basic, accident-related type policies or full-blown, medical, definitely a rise in interest. So that's important. I think, now's the time that this becomes really important, because this illness doesn't, decide, you just have to be unlucky in the wrong place.
Absolutely.
And you're going to be susceptible, yeah.
True enough. Thank you, Antony. Let's take a short breather. Now, in the meantime, follow us on Twitter. Let us know your thoughts on how else the insurance industry can help reduce COVID-19's impact in 2021. Welcome back to Money Matters with me, Tamina Kausji. We're discussing the insurance industry today with PIAM. Now, let's take a look at the industry moving forward in the year ahead. So, Antony, moving into 2021, what are some of the major challenges the insurance industry will be facing, and what are some of the trends that you forecast will actually take over?
Sure. Obviously, it's the economy, number one, right? And not just Malaysia's economy, the global economy. Sure. To what extent and how fast can we start to recover from this? There was a lot of excitement when the vaccines came out, but now, of course, we're struggling with how to actually, roll it out.
That's right.
It's a massive logistical exercise, unprecedented. So I think it looks as if this will still be a very challenging year. Mm-hmm. At least we have a better idea of, what to expect. And so we're being prepared for that. So I think it will still be tough. I don't think there'll be much growth. There may still be even shrinkage as a result of this, depending on how we recover. But I do see trends. So as I spoken earlier, trend in terms of awareness of health insurance, etc., coverages. I think there's also greater desire to, simplification of how do we sell our insurance policies to consumers. How can we distribute with platforms that are, wider and more digital? We see that happening in many countries, and there will be more of that. I mean, Malaysians typically quite lazy and slow to embrace that.
We embrace trends perhaps 5 years after Indonesia, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's some exceptions. Of course, shopping online is huge.
Sure.
People are happy to do that. But when it comes to finance and money matters, I think that's where we need to, push that. So, in line with that, I think also there'll be a move towards, more digital and less having the need for physical presences in places.
Absolutely.
I think that is helpful because we can reach further and deeper. So it's a mindset change. The more that we can get people to embrace that, and you see, China's always the great example with, Alibaba and all the rest of it that do their, insurance online in a big distribution way. Those are trends that we expect to accelerate.
Now, speaking about trends aside, which sectors in particular which have the potential to grow are perhaps extending business cover to provide coverage for employees working from home, which has been a social reality for, I think, every industry across the board. The UK, meanwhile, has already done this for NHS workers. What about Malaysia? Any ideas from PIAM at least about how we could move forward?
So, I mean, we have examples. There are examples in other countries where this is happening more. So we expect insurers to bring these products to the market. So typically it's liability if you fall over, if you get unwell, etc. All these things need to come in place. And I think the infrastructure is key also, right? So people need to look at, we need to make it better because I think not every part of Malaysia has the correct infrastructure to allow working from home. So that's something that needs to change. Flexibility ultimately is the key. So I think most businesses need that ability to have a bit of both. Cyber is a big issue, right? When it comes to work from home. So people need to have a sense of, there's much greater risk of exposure.
Sure, but at the same time, how do you bolster yourself?
That's right.
Moving from cyber, though, on the other hand, looking at, let's say, motor insurance, which is, of course, a huge mainstay. But, of course, is it fair to be paying the same level of motor insurance if your car usage has been drastically reduced? How is the insurance industry going to balance these bigger questions?
So this is my pet subject. So we are working with Bank Negara closely. So we're in phase liberalization.
Yes, that's right.
We as industry are trying to push for more liberalization so we can bring greater innovation and actually allow more risk-based pricing. So the reality is that, good driver, etc., should be paying less and bad drivers need to be penalized. I think there's always a reluctance to do the harsh stuff on the people that are driving badly. I think I think it's about time for Malaysian drivers absolutely.
Especially.
It's long overdue. Too many people die on our roads, unfortunately.
That's true, that's true. And those figures have actually not really gone down despite the MCO, despite
you only saw it when there was
movement.
full lockdown, we of course saw it, right?
Sure, that was back in March 18th,
absolutely.
2020.
And now it's course back up. And unfortunately, the food delivery fellows, as you all know, are pretty, reckless in how they drive on the roads. So, it potentially makes it worse, actually.
That's right. So from there, very quickly, Antony, before we end, can we expect more liberalization in other insurance sectors? Because it is a unique opportunity for insurers to rethink and innovate as you adjust and respond.
So I think everything else is actually quite open. So it's just fire and motor that are the last
last bastion, so to speak.
Exactly. So we need to get everyone across that mentally.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, for example, let's look at the need for new products, and some new products that could potentially be on the board could be, you can maybe actually include pandemics as part of future or upcoming insurance plans as quick as 2021, Q3, Q4, right?
Yeah. So there are a lot, I mean, at a global level, there are a lot of industry forums really talking about this right now. It's a bit too early to be able to kind of work out how this would work. It would need to be a joint, government and private sector relationship because this is very complex, right? And I think the good news, the only good news, coming through this, we're getting a lot of lessons learned in terms of how to, be better in terms of handling and managing. So I think you'll see, simply because everyone wears masks, flu levels have come down.
Oh, absolutely.
Right,
I think everyone's been realizing that we've all actually been falling sick a lot less because we're staying at home, we're taking supplements, all of that stuff.
That's right. So we got to go through that process and work through it. I mean, mental health is unfortunately another issue that arises because of this, but I think that's because of the stress of not knowing how long this is going to take to get across and get over it, right?
That's right.
And some sectors will take even up to 3-4 years to sort of come back. So we just got to learn to live with that new reality and reinvent ourselves in many ways.
Fantastic. And meanwhile, there's always insurance to help back you up.
That's right, exactly. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Antony, for being with us on the show. Thank you for joining us on Money Matters, Antony. Before we go, find us on Twitter and let us know your thoughts about today's discussion. We'll be back next week with more money insights that matter. Till then, I'm Tamina Kausji. Thanks for watching, and please remember to stay home and stay safe.